Okay, here's another solving polynomial equations given, in this case, two roots. And the reason why is the degree of this polynomial is 4, because that's our highest exponent seen for x. All right. X to the third, x to the second, x to the first, x to the fourth. So my degree is 4. That means I've got 4 roots. And I'm given 2, -1 and 3. So I know that x plus 1 is a factor of this polynomial. If I divide that into it, it will come out evenly with a remainder of 0. Or x minus 3 is also a factor of this polynomial. And if I divide that, I'll get a remainder of 0, which means if I multiply this times the quotient or that times the quotient, I'll get that polynomial after I divide. So we're going to divide this out, but rather to get our reduced equation, but rather than use long division, we'll use synthetic division. So we'll set this up. So we'll start with -1. And I've got 2 minus 11 plus 4 plus 29 plus 12. I don't have any missing terms like 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So I don't have to put a placeholder. Draw my horizontal line, bring down my 2, and we're ready to go to work. So -1 times 2 is -2. 11, -11 and -2 is -13. -1 times -13 is positive 13. 4 plus 13 is positive 17. -1 times positive 17 is -17. 29 minus 17 is 12. -1 times 12 is going to be -12. And there's my 0. So that's my reduced equation. And that's going to be the same, if I wrote that equation out, that would be the same thing as 2x to the third minus 13x squared plus 17x plus 12 equals 0. So that's my reduced equation. But I know that this will also be a factor of this, so I can divide it out again. And I can just use these numbers. I don't have to write this out. I can just start with 2 -13 plus 17 plus 12 and divide that by 3. And I'll get my reduced equation that I really want, because that's a quadratic, which I have several ways to solve. So bring down your 2 and we can go to work on this. 3 times 2 is 6. -13 plus 6 is -7. 3 times -7 is -21. -21 plus 17 is -4. 3 times -4 is -12. And that's 0. And there's my reduced equation. So that's what I'm trying to get at. So I can get my other 2 roots. And that's a quadratic, which I have 3 ways to solve. So I could either use the quadratic formula to complete the square, or try to factor this. Quadratic formula might appeal to me because I might have to work at this. But let's see if we can factor this, and it's a general trinomial, so let's use our little general trinomial method. So we draw the little x here to organize our data. 2 times -4, first term times the third term, that's going to be -8. And then I need the -7, so I need 2 numbers that multiply to give -8, but add up to be -7, and looks like it's going to be -8 times 1. And check that. Okay? -8 times 1 is -8. -1 plus 1 is -7, so that works. So I'm going to rewrite this middle term. So instead of writing -7, I'm going to write -8 x and plus 1 x. Minus 4 equals 0. So we've seen these before. This is our good old general trinomial method. And we'll use 4-term grouping and factor down the middle. What can I factor out of these 2 terms? I can factor out a 2x. And what's left in the first term is going to be x minus, and if I take 2x out of 8x, I get 4. And what can I factor out of these 2 terms? It looks like just a 1. And what's left is going to be That's still equal to 0. X minus 4. And then I can take out the x minus 4. And what's left is 2x plus 1. So there's a good review of our general trinomial method. So we set each of these equal to 0 if x minus 4 equals 0. X equals positive 4. If 2x minus 1 equals 0. Remember, if two things multiply to give 0, one or the other or both must be 0. So we can say 2x minus 1 equals 0. We can use an or there. And then I can add 1, so 2x equals 1. X equals 1/2. Add 1 to both sides. So those are the two roots. So my solution set would have all four roots. So I was given up at the top, way back up here, -1 and 3. So those are two of my roots. My solution set, -1, 3. And then I also have 4 and 1/2. That's your solution set. There's your 4 roots. Okay? So these are good problems, and they get us kind of ready for what we're going to do next.